come down to that? I mean, isn't that what part of all this comes down to, is people aren't going to give up their cars. They're not in North America. They're not going to, they're not going to...
I would agree that people sure love their automobiles. I mean, I don't own a car, but I do like automobiles. I got nothing against autonomous mobility. I mean, I think we should be able to get from point A to point B. I think what we're going to see happen, though, is that every city is going to end up feeling and looking a lot like New York City in the not too distant future. I mean, as population growth increases, as everybody moves into urban centers, it's going to be harder and harder to get around in a single occupancy vehicle. So whether it's about environmental concerns or just sort of economic, being difficult to purchase your own automobile as the economy shrinks, I think we're actually going to see a shift to people getting out of their cars simply because it isn't convenient. The question is, will we prepare by investing in the kind of public transit and light rail and the sort of infrastructure that actually helps people get from point A to point B, or will we not? And we've definitely seen in Europe and increasingly in Asia, there's been a big push towards that kind of investment in smarter transportation alternatives that reduce pollution, that increase quality of life, that walkability of your cities, and also get people out of their cars. But I don't necessarily think it'll be environmental concern that pushes us there. I think it'll actually just be population and sort of urbanization.
So what about the people who would raise it? Pipelines must mean jobs, especially maybe for local communities. How does that play out?
I mean, there's really not a lot of jobs for people in BC. There's construction jobs, no doubt about it, building a pipeline. But once you've got it built, you're not talking about a lot of jobs. It's like maybe a couple of dozen jobs. I had somebody once compared it to building a Walmart. It's about the same number of jobs to build it and about the same number of jobs to run it afterwards. And I'm not a big fan of Walmart, but personally, if I had to choose between Walmart and the risk of tar sands oil spilling in the Fraser River, I'd pick a Walmart. There's also way more jobs at stake. If you look at the sort of what is the heart and soul of the BC economy, I mean, so much of BC's branding, if I can use that dirty word, or our property values, all the things that our BC economy depends on. Whether you look at the tourism aspects of it or just the appeal of British Columbia as this place that's filled with so much biodiversity and so much beauty. I mean, it just doesn't stand to reason that oil pipelines here are a good idea, or that turning our coast into an export facility for the oil sands is really congruent with what our brand or our sort of belief system in this province really is. So I think, if you really want to have a sincere conversation about the jobs, it's really about the jobs in Alberta, the tar sands jobs. And those are good paying jobs, and there's a fair number of them. But, just because you can get a lot of jobs doing it doesn't mean it's a good idea. There's a lot of jobs, growing opium in Afghanistan, and we have no problem telling people that they shouldn't be doing that because of the harms associated with it. And that's a much poorer country than Canada, and that's one of the only forms of economy that they have. I mean, a country like Canada that's so wealthy and so developed can have alternatives, and really should. We really have no excuse to not be doing the responsible thing. And quite frankly, it's fundamentally irresponsible for us in this age of climate change to be sort of a pusher of what we know to be harmful when we really know better and should be pushing for alternatives.
So are there any regulations? So is this strictly like free enterprise they'll be able to do? I mean, aside from what campaigning people can do, like, are there any regulations? Can government restrict this kind of thing or have any decision-making power in that?
Can and do are totally different things. What we're seeing right now is our federal government is basically acting like a bunch of lobbyists for the oil industry. I mean, if you look at what's happened in our most recent budget bill, I mean, the government's basically bending over backwards to try to make it as easy as possible to get pipelines approved. And they're even doing things that just seem completely insane. I mean, like shutting down the Coast Guard station in Kitsilano, getting the budgets for the people who do oil spill response cut so that there's now only people in Montreal and not in British Columbia anymore who are here to deal with oil spills. I mean, it's just crazy. There's also talk about changing the Fisheries Act to get rid of the protection of habitat for fish species. I mean, yeah, scary stuff. And it seems to me that our current Prime Minister is more than willing to spend all of his political and social capital on trying to get these projects pushed through. That's how significant I think he sees these projects. But it's overwhelmingly unpopular. There's definitely a lot that the government could do to better regulate these projects. I mean, even just the existing pipeline and the existing tanker traffic has got a huge risk. I mean, right now we've got 80 tankers a year going through Burrard Inlet, carrying 3 times as much as was spilled by the Exxon Valdez. and much more dangerous fuel. So I mean, we should be doing a heck of a lot more just right now. There's an existing threat, and definitely that should be top of mind before we even consider an expansion.
And I think Harper also has made some changes to how groups like yours maybe can be deterred from being activists in situations like this.
There's this talk of going after the charitable status and I mean, it's just, it's so blatantly political. I mean, at what point, Stephen Harper decided he wasn't a big fan of foreign direct investment from the United States, I'm not sure. I work for a group that doesn't happen to take a tremendous amount of money from big foundations, but I mean, I don't have anything against it. I think that, climate change is a global issue. An oil spill could affect people up and down the coast. I mean, personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with people investing in issues that they believe in, regardless of where they live. I mean, I support causes other places in the world because I care about what happens in the Amazon rainforest or wherever else, and I think people, are concerned about these issues, wherever they live, have every right to support them. I mean, it's just clearly politically motivated sort of spin doctoring, trying to take what is their weakness and make it a strength. I mean, obviously, this agenda is being pushed very much by the oil industry in the United States, by Houston and sort of these big oil companies. And to sort of point the finger at the environmental groups is taking a little bit of money from foundations who care about climate change or care about oil spills or care about trying to stop the tar sands and all the related impacts in Alberta. I mean, I just don't think it really holds up to reason, and anybody who really takes a look at it, it just doesn't pass the sniff test. It's pretty blatant.
We really are quickly running out of time. How can people get in touch with the Wilderness Committee and maybe get involved?
Well, I'm really easy to find on Facebook and Twitter, if you do that kind of thing. Just Ben West on Facebook or on Twitter. Also, you can go to our website, wildernesscommittee.org, and there's contact information there. We've got a tanker campaign page, which is wildernesscommittee.org/tankers. And there's a lot of information there. You can sign up for our mailing list and get more involved and more informed.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Okay, thank you.